It seems like this movie will never get made. Blake Lively apparently is no longer attached to this project.
The file dropped just after midnight. The timing was deliberate, strategic, even. At 12:03 a.m. Pacific, just as Los Angeles exhaled into its post-premiere lull and newsroom inboxes grew still, the first encrypted email appeared. Then another, and another. 6 journalists, all from rival outlets and each with a known history of covering celebrity litigation with surgical precision, received the exact same message. No visible metadata, just a plain-text subject line. Discovery unredacted.
So Blake Lively's team keep writing the judge, I think probably 3 to 4 times a day at this point.
The kind of phrase that makes seasoned legal correspondents sit upright, hands stilled above their keyboards. Inside the email was a single link, masked and password protected, leading to a secure server based in Riga, Latvia, a jurisdiction known for its impenetrable data privacy laws and reluctance to cooperate with US subpoenas. The signature on the file was scrubbed. There were no headers, but once decrypted, the contents of the download ignited a small explosion across Hollywood's most rarefied circles.
And I'm just going to say it from day one. I don't think she's going to go to trial. I don't think she wants to go to trial. I don't think the purpose of this is to go to trial. I think the purpose of this is to damage Baldoni and get back at him as much as she can, to inflict as much pain on him as possible.
What spilled out was 672 pages of raw legal dynamite. Deposition transcripts, redacted memos with their black bars digitally lifted, internal billing schedules from law firms, even Slack screenshots from a crisis PR firm. But nestled deep within the mountain of text was a single spreadsheet, a ledger, unassuming in format but damning in implication. In it, a line item recorded a $1.2 million consultancy fee transferred from a Delaware-registered media firm, Garnet Shore LLC.
Because as I said, we definitely know they planted stories about Justin Baldoni, for sure.
To a Los Angeles company owned by a man named Dorian Keyes. Dorian, as multiple cross-reference documents confirmed, is the younger brother of U.S. District Judge Herman Keyes, the same Judge Herman Keyes who, only weeks earlier, had ruled in favor of Blake Lively and Adams versus Baldoni et al., dismissing 2 of the most damaging claims against her without trial and effectively collapsing the plaintiff's case. The decision, handed down with curt formality, had been hailed in celebrity media as a decisive win for Lively.
None of them have given Blake Lively's team what they want so far. I'm thinking that they have everything that they need from Jennifer Abel. They did actually take her phone and everything that was on there, so what they're looking for now.
Bolstering her image as an embattled creative asserting control over her career. The timing of the transfer, 3 days before Judge Keyes issued his dismissal order, was noted in the unredacted memo with almost cruel clarity. Wire confirmed, Q3 deliverables aligned. No invoice needed. By 6 a.m., screenshots of the file were already circulating in encrypted signal groups frequented by entertainment lawyers and PR operatives. 2 reporters met in person that morning in a coffee shop in Studio City, trading notes, checking timestamps. A third forwarded the file to a digital forensics expert in DC. It's real. The expert later confirmed to The Atlantic.
This is a letter that they wrote. I think this was written yesterday. And they're saying that Justin Baldoni's team is not cooperating with giving them the evidence that they're looking for. They're looking for evidence.
There's no doubt this was internal. Someone with access wanted this out. At the center of the storm sat Blake Lively, a woman whose career had spanned teen dramas, prestige films, and luxury campaigns, now suddenly rebranded from industry sweetheart to alleged conspirator in what one former federal prosecutor called a textbook blueprint for judicial tampering. Just 3 weeks earlier, Lively had stood on the marble steps of the Stanley Mosque courthouse in a pale ivory power suit, surrounded by a halo of publicists and attorneys.
They're basically saying that the Wayfair parties haven't given them enough. They want more. They want to find this evidence. And as I said so many times before,
cameras captured her in profile, wind lifting her freshly blown-out hair, as she delivered a short, trembling statement about justice, perseverance, and the importance of women telling their stories. One high-angle Getty image, with the courthouse seal blurred artfully in the background, was picked up by Vanity Fair, People, and The Cut. For a moment, it looked like the beginning of a third-act redemption arc. Now, those same photos look like prelude to something else entirely. Bulgari confirmed off-record that the $320,000 bracelet Lively wore had not been returned.
This feels very much like a narcissistic injury where she just can't let go and she needs to blame someone else for her mistakes. But all of that to say, I also think that she's abusing the court system.
Netflix's internal Slack channels flagged the image for narrative reevaluation during a routine talent risk assessment. And by the afternoon following the leak, a wave of quiet panic had rippled through Say, WME, and unnamed film financiers, all asking a version of the same question. Had they just backed a fraud? The silence in the wake of the verdict, once interpreted as graceful discretion, suddenly felt like vacuum. Lively had not tweeted. Her Instagram, usually teeming with curated, pastel-toned glamour, had gone eerily still.
They're saying that the smear campaign is still going on. So Blake Lively's team was asking for communication going over a much longer period of time than what actually Baldoni's team have been offering them. They're saying that they can give them communications from June 2024 to December 2024.
No photos with her children, no playful comments from Ryan, no behind-the-scenes anecdotes. Even her stories archive, normally stacked with beauty brands and filtered candids, had been scrubbed to a blank slate. That silence, far from signaling peace, had begun to feel radioactive. And as the unsealed documents began making their way from inboxes to broadcast rundowns and social feeds, the implications expanded beyond Lively herself. This wasn't just a story about an actress with ambition. It was a story about the scaffolding that holds up celebrity influence.
Like I said before, who planted that story that Blake Lively was fat-shamed? Who was at that meeting knowing about what was going on? That was a meeting that took place in Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' apartment, and there were very few people there. So, of course, it was someone from Blake Lively's team.
The agents, the judges, the publicists, the platforms, and what happens when that scaffolding starts to creak. The question was no longer whether Blake Lively had rigged a legal outcome. The question was, who else helped her do it? To understand how Blake Lively, the poised red carpet darling of couture runways, daytime talk show charm, and family franchise bankability, found herself teetering on the precipice of career annihilation, one must return to the quiet, bookish heat of summer 2023. That's when Justin Baldoni, the earnest actor-turned-director whose Instagram TED Talk energy masked a deepening desire to be taken seriously in prestige cinema, optioned It Ends With Us.
The pattern of behavior of people that are just doing this to harass people is to often file a ton of motions, to confuse the judge, to rack up and drive up the costs.
Colleen Hoover's chart-topping and emotionally fraught novel. It was a gamble, a risky one. The book, while commercially magnetic, carried a heavy thematic load. Cycles of familial trauma, post-relationship grief, and the bruised aftermath of manipulation masquerading as love. Baldoni, who had been circling the periphery of indie credibility, viewed it as his pivot, away from teen-friendly fare and into award-season drama. A deeply personal, socially relevant adaptation that, in the right hands, could transform him into the kind of director who gets standing ovations at Telluride. And then Blake entered the room. Baldoni's production company, Wayfarer Studios, was struggling to secure adequate financing without the insulation of a major studio. Several streamers had passed. Investors were skittish. According to internal communications later submitted into court record, Blake Lively's team approached with an offer. She would take the lead role and bring with her the kind of mainstream attention and brand amplification that could land distribution. But there was a caveat. Lively wanted not only top billing but a co-producer credit and influence over tone, aesthetics, and crucially final cut. At first, it seemed like a fair exchange, until it wasn't. Emails presented during the preliminary hearing painted a picture of rapidly souring collaboration. A thread dated August 9, 2023, between a Columbia Pictures executive and Lively's representation included a jarring request. Blake wanted the lead character reimagined as flirty and yummy, an exact quote, rather than traumatized and complicated. A later reply from the film's screenwriter noted, diplomatically, that the proposed rewrites were tonally divergent and seemed to reframe the character as aspirationally fashionable rather than emotionally wounded. Early drafts of the revised script, marked with Lively's digital annotations, were introduced as evidence by Baldoni's legal team. Entire sections had been scrubbed. Scenes dealing with childhood abuse were shortened or rewritten with glib voiceovers. One interior monologue about survivors' guilt had been replaced with a montage set to an up-tempo track by a major pop artist, allegedly recommended by Lively's personal stylist. The film that had once resembled an A24-style chamber piece now read like a glossy, blue-filtered Netflix romance with light trauma seasoning. Multiple insiders claimed Baldoni, though characteristically calm, grew increasingly frustrated. "He didn't raise his voice," said a former crew member, "but you could see it in his posture. He'd just walk off set after takes. Sometimes he didn't even call cut." Then came the motion. On the morning of October 26, 2023, Lively's attorney filed a sealed complaint in federal court alleging inappropriate conduct by Baldoni during production, language vague enough to unleash an immediate frenzy in tabloid media. Within hours, production was paused. By the next day, the studio issued a boilerplate statement about ongoing investigations and commitment to safe creative environments. But in the background, a different narrative was already unraveling. A crew member, later identified as a lighting technician and part-time photographer, leaked hours of surveillance-style footage from the set to TMZ. The video contradicted Lively's version of events. In one clip, she appeared to override Baldoni's blocking of a pivotal scene, insisting the camera angle prioritize vertical content potential for social platforms. In another, she was seen berating the costume department over a lavender blouse. "It doesn't work. It's not in the grid. That tone dies against my highlights." The footage also captured what appeared to be exasperated glances between Baldoni and other senior crew, an unspoken acknowledgement, perhaps, of a production going off the rails. According to someone present during multiple arbitration sessions that followed, Baldoni's camp attempted to address the imbalance diplomatically. Justin never retaliated, but he made it clear to the producers. This was no longer a collaboration. This was a takeover. The real rupture, however, came not in wardrobe trailers or script edits, but in the corridors of legal discovery. In January 2024, Baldoni's legal team, preparing a countersuit for reputational harm and production sabotage, began combing through internal communications. What they found unearthed an entirely new dimension to the drama. A cluster of calendar invites and email threads suggested that Lively's counsel had met privately with Judge Herman Keyes, then presiding over the early stages of related litigation, on at least 3 occasions. The meetings were not recorded in court logs. The entries bore names like Schedule Clarification Private, Chambers Check-in, and Mitigation Q4. Lively's legal team insisted these were standard procedural meetings, coordinated to clarify scheduling conflicts and filing deadlines. But a junior paralegal at the firm, since resigned, leaked internal memos bearing more damning subject lines, JHK, final push, Keyes note language, and most cryptically, risk profile, post-dismissal PR pivot. Then came the money trail. During the audit ordered by Baldoni's lawyers, financial analysts traced a $1.2 million wire transfer from Vireo Strategies, a boutique crisis PR firm frequently hired by high-profile clients during reputational emergencies, to a consulting firm registered under the name Cadine Consulting, incorporated in California but with no public-facing website or personnel listed. The owner? Dorian Keyes, a corporate consultant with no documented legal experience, and brother to Judge Herman Keyes. The payment had been logged in Vireo's Q3 report as Strategic Litigation Advisory, with a memo line that simply read, "Deliverables confirmed/NDA in place." The language was clean, dry, corporate, but to legal professionals, it raised immediate alarms. "It's the vagueness that makes it suspicious," said a white-collar litigator with experience in judicial ethics cases. "If you're doing nothing wrong, you itemize. You don't bury a 7-figure payment in abstraction." When confronted, both the judge and Lively's team denied impropriety. A spokesperson for Judge Keyes said he has never and will never accept compensation related to cases over which he presides. Lively's reps declined to comment but reiterated her full confidence in the judicial process. That confidence, however, began to unravel rapidly. By March 2024, the federal judiciary's Internal Ethics Committee had launched a formal investigation into Judge Keyes' conduct. Subpoenas were issued. Communications between Vireo, Lively's attorneys, and the judge's chambers were ordered into preservation. A draft ethics complaint, leaked and widely circulated within media law circles, suggested sustained and coordinated attempts to improperly influence judicial discretion. The implications were seismic. Not only could the case be reopened, but the judge himself could face suspension or removal from the bench. Lively, meanwhile, was now exposed to a potential federal inquiry for conspiracy and bribery-related misconduct. "This isn't just a PR mess," said one legal ethics professor at UC Berkeley, who requested anonymity given their ties to the judiciary. "This could be judicial bribery, plain and simple. If proven, it will be one of the most egregious breaches of courtroom integrity in recent memory." The fallout, already underway, would extend far beyond one actress's resume. It was the system itself that stood accused, and the curtain, finally, was being pulled back. The blowback was swift. Within 24 hours of the leak, Lively's name was quietly scrubbed from a Netflix special in post-production. A rumored Apple TV Plus deal was shelved. And perhaps most damaging of all, her own husband, Ryan Reynolds, posted a stark black and white story on Instagram. A single line of text over the image of a courthouse door. "Justice doesn't come in designer heels." The internet immediately pounced. Fan pages began reposting old red carpet interviews, dissecting moments for clues of marital discord. Reddit threads exploded with unverified claims from alleged crew members, assistants, and insiders. A TikTok creator unearthed a 2020 podcast episode where Reynolds had gushed about ethics and accountability in film production, sparking viral speculation that his post wasn't just a cryptic statement, but a public fracture. According to a source who attended the emergency Zoom call held hours after Ryan's post, Blake was incoherent, sobbing, and screaming at both her manager and her lawyer. By nightfall, her longtime PR firm, Farnsworth Plus Co., issued a statement saying they had terminated all representation due to lack of transparency from the client. The next morning, a leaked email from a Netflix executive confirmed what many had feared. Lively's projects were no longer viable due to reputational concerns. The platform's legal department had reportedly flagged the judge payment documents as material exposure in its compliance review. Meanwhile, the Department of Justice opened a judicial ethics inquiry. Judge Keys was placed on administrative leave. Federal investigators issued subpoenas for all communications between Lively's team and the shell company that routed the $1.2 million. While no formal charges have been filed, insiders say a grand jury has been impaneled and a decision could come before the end of the summer. The cultural conversation, too, has evolved. In a post-#MeToo and post-Depp Heard trial landscape, there's a growing skepticism about celebrity-driven narratives, particularly when wielded as PR weapons. "This isn't just about Blake," said a former studio PR head. "It's about what happens when power, beauty, and fame try to bend truth to their will, and what happens when the facade cracks." On social media, users have drawn parallels between Lively's alleged tactics and the broader influencer economy, where carefully curated optics often obscure more chaotic realities. A viral tweet summed it up: "It's giving girl boss gaslight gavel." Still, Lively retains a small but loyal inner circle, though noticeably quieter. Her Instagram has gone dark. Her once ubiquitous presence at galas and fashion weeks has evaporated. Even her fan accounts have grown hesitant, either deleting recent posts or issuing cautious statements of waiting for all the facts.